You know shit's real. This is from my mom, right? This is a text from my mom. South Korea, look what's going on. It's crazy. There is an arrest warrant for their sitting president. What in the world is going on? So, apparently South Korea is a dystopia now. I do realize that there was been a lot of revolts, a lot of protesting going on in South Korea. So let's figure out what the hell has been happening.
From anguish to frustration.
Arrogance of the rich and powerful.
An emergency dispatcher in South Korea receives a distress call from a child aboard a ferry.
우리를 도와주세요. 배가 가라앉고 있어요.
The Seoul ferry is making a routine journey to the vacation hotspot Jeju Island, carrying 476 passengers. Most are school children and their teachers on a class trip. The dispatcher asks the boy to put the captain on the phone. If the ferry is sinking, why hasn't an adult called for help?
This is the craziest intro I think I've ever seen.
Not all passengers understand the danger. As the boat starts to tilt, some kids yell with excitement, as if they're on a theme park ride.
Oh no.
But soon, the disaster is undeniable. Panic breaks out. Shortly after, the 6,800-ton vessel sinks.
Yo.
The boy who made the distress call and 300 other passengers, mostly other kids, drown. The tragedy traumatizes the nation. How could this happen? Who is
Yeah, I didn't even hear about that. That's fucking hard.
responsible? Initially, the crew was blamed for incompetence and cowardice. When the boat was clearly sinking, the captain told the doomed passengers to stay put in their cabins.
What? Don't move. If you move, it's more dangerous. Don't move.
He and several crew members fled the scene and left the kids to drown.
Oh no, dude, that guy deserves an execution, and a slow one at that.
The South Korean president says their actions are akin to murder, and the captain is
Yeah.
sentenced to life in prison.
Yeah, no, that's Sabuku, bro, with a dull butter knife.
The Korean Coast Guard is also blamed for the sluggish response and for severely fumbling the rescue mission.
Oh, that's tragic.
But then, an investigation reveals that incompetence isn't the whole story. The ferry was more than twice as heavy as it was supposed to be. It had been illegally modified to hold more cargo. More cargo, of course, means more cash. The nation is outraged that someone so clearly prioritized profit over safety. Whoever owns the
And I do remember protesting about something that happened about just like pure greed, and I think this is ultimately the roots of that.
ferry needs to face the music. But who is it? In South Korea, corporate responsibility can be hard to pin down. Family-run conglomerates control
In Korea, that's everywhere, bro. Corporate. That's like the whole reason why you join a corporate is just to have disassociation with freaking, bad outcomes.
sprawling networks of subsidiaries. Complex structures often hide who's really in charge. Some families control so much wealth they're deemed nearly untouchable. Time and again, they
They recently had an airplane crash and 170 people died a couple days ago in Korea.
dodge responsibilities for crimes, yet continue to amass wealth and influence. In this video, we will look at 3 of these families, including the one responsible for the ferry tragedy.
Perfect. We get to see the dark side of Korea. This actually video is kind of dope. This is like the Rockefellers, the freaking the Soroses. This is like the dark web or the dark energies in America, but in Korea.
South Korea's elite families are so powerful and
Samsung is the king of Korea.
influential that many say they are the ones actually running the country.
Yeah, most times it's these families with these oligarchical style families that have power and money and influence in the actual communities, and they're the ones who have the ability to turn the gears. Yeah, they're the ones behind the curtains. Rothschild, is it real? Yeah, it's a real person. Yeah. Even now.
The South Korean economy is an exceptional success story. After the Korean War in the 1950s, it was one of the poorest countries in the world. Today, it is the 14th biggest economy in the world.
That's, shout out to Korea. Some hardworking people.
South Korea's rapid ascent is attributed primarily to its export-led economy and to the dominance of chaebol. Chaebol are large business conglomerates that are owned and run by family dynasties. Just after the war, the country's military dictators jump-started these family businesses with capital to rebuild South Korea.
They are definitely a part of the deep state. The deep state doesn't start and end with the Rothschilds, but they are definitely interwoven within it.
As key industries. The chaebol thrived and diversified into sectors like tech, finance, and manufacturing. In just a few decades, they helped transform South Korea into a global industrial powerhouse. It's often called the
It's like a double-edged sword because you need families to have you or not families, but you need people to be able to go in and make decisions and have power. But if you absolute power corrupts absolutely. So like even though a family was able, or families, these corporations were able to prop up Korea. Is it worth it now? Now looking at where it's
on
at,
the Han River. South Korea's top
some would argue probably.
companies, Samsung, SK, LG, and Hyundai, are all family-run chaebol, and chaebol revenues account for the majority of the country's wealth. Samsung alone is responsible for a significant part of the country's GDP. For 2024, Bloomberg Economics estimates a record-high contribution from the company. According to their calculations, Samsung will likely be responsible for about half of the country's economic growth. When we work on stories like this one, we found it really helps to visualize the data. Brilliant is an amazing tool we've used to better understand data and see the connection make data to the phone more. Up from first vote memorization. Learning by doing in this way is proven to be up to 6 times faster.
Okay, there we go.
All this concentrated wealth leads to a lot of concentrated power. Chaebol families enjoy a very cozy relationship with the federal government. They receive subsidies, tax incentives, and special favors. And political leaders rely on chaebol for support and advice. For decades, chaebol were widely celebrated as the pivotal drivers of South Korea's economic miracle. But the 1997 Asian financial crisis challenged the standing of the families. 13 of the top 30 chaebol went technically bankrupt, revealing the risks of an economy relying so heavily on just a few companies. Nowadays, more and more South Koreans express concerns about the dominance of these conglomerates. Not only that, as the decades passed, the public watched chaebol repeatedly caught up in scandals and crimes, embezzlement, bribery, labor law violations, health crises. For too long, the government has gone easy on these dynasties, and the people are increasingly fed up.
Nutgate?
In December 2014, Korean Air Vice President and heiress Heather Cho had an infamous meltdown. It was over a couple of macadamia nuts. A flight attendant had the gall to serve her nuts in a bag instead of on a plate. Cho shouted abuse. She then called over the cabin crew chief and made him kneel to ask for forgiveness. Under
What the power trip is this lady on?
her orders, the passenger plane returned to the gate, where the cabin crew chief was fired on the spot.
Nutgate is real?
If you're not Korean and you hear about this story, it might just seem funny or absurd. But
It is absurd.
South Korea, it was fuel to the flame of growing public frustration. Yet another reminder of chaebol leaders' arrogance and entitlement.
Yeah, that's exactly why we think it's crazy. The arrogance, the entitlement, to have somebody get on their knees and put into the, like, that position of saying, yo, I'm sorry, like asking for forgiveness. Like, what the hell?
They took their rage to social
This lady is nuts.
media and later the streets. At first, Korean Air tried to downplay the incident. They released a statement saying that because Cho's executive role was to oversee cabin service, it was only natural that she would discipline an offending staff member. But people weren't having it. The public already had issues with the Korean Air dynasty and their shameless antics. A few years prior, Cho's brother was investigated for pushing an elderly woman. Her father has been convicted
Yo, the brothers pushing. These guys are like TV villain kind of bad guys.
of tax fraud. And Cho herself was criticized for strategically giving birth to her twin sons in the US, which exempted them from South Korea's compulsory military service.
So they're naturalized citizens too?
Eventually, Cho tearfully apologized and resigned from her post.
죄송합니다.
She was then convicted of violating aviation safety and abusing her power. She faced up to 15 years in prison, but was given the minimum sentence of 12 months. She only
15 years? Nah, you get 12 months.
served 5 of those before a judge reduced her sentence. The
And she only served 5 of those months?
chaebol's influence runs deep, all throughout the government, even to the very top. Already in the 2012 South Korean presidential election, a key debate was on how to limit the power of these families. Park Geun-hye became South Korea's first female president.
2013년 2월 25일 대통령 박근혜
When she took office, many worried it would be business as usual. Her father was Park Chung-hee, the military leader who took power in a 1961 coup. He is considered the chief architect of the chaebol system, and Geun-hye became her father's
And his daughter is now running everything? Great.
stand-in first lady when she was 22 after a North Korean assassin had killed her mother. Park
Whoa! That's like the start of Batman.
Chung-hye's admirers credit him for the miracle on the Han River. His critics remember the cruelty of his iron-fisted rule and his imprisonment of dissidents. One of these was Miss Park's key rival in the election. His name is Moon Jae-in, a former human rights lawyer and anti-authoritarian activist during the dictator's reign. Now, in 2012, the ex-dictator's daughter campaigned on a more business-friendly platform than her liberal opponent Moon. She was focusing on reform rather than punishment. Her stance was that Chaebol might be unruly, but with the right reforms, they could play fair. But then, Sivol happened. This incident
Yo, don't mess with those Korean people. All of a sudden, they're gonna call back, and all of a sudden, you're gonna see ninjas coming through. You might start hearing the Naruto theme song. You're gonna hear, psh, and then a bunch of Koreans jump out because of the Shadow Clone Jutsu, and they're gonna come out with their Rasengan. Like, don't piss them off.
was much bigger than run-of-the-mill embezzlement or tax evasion. Faced with a furious and traumatized public, Park vows to bring the accountable people to justice. After analyzing complex financial records, the Yu family is eventually found to own the ferry. The Yus are well known for their eccentric patriarch, a reclusive businessman slash cult-like pastor slash aspiring artist named Yu Byung-on. The president says he and his family are the root cause of this calamity and issues a warrant for their arrest. Yu Byung-on keeps a low profile and is rarely seen in public. He's known as the millionaire with no face.
These are the people that scare me the most, who have the most amount of money and can literally like hide their face and operate in today's society without ever really being seen. It's super scary. Nerd, I see your question. I'm going to answer it at the end of the video. It's a fun one.
And now, he's nowhere to be found. President Park kicks off the largest manhunt in South Korean history to find Yu. She mobilizes the military and nearly 10,000 police officers to raid the headquarters of the Evangelical Baptist Church of Korea, a religious sect that Yu co-founded in 1962. Yu is a charismatic and inspiring speaker. He was able to attract a substantial following and elicit substantial favors. By the 1970s, Yu's growing church became a money-making enterprise. He persuaded members to donate to or invest in companies linked with the church. Those companies sold a wide range of products, from organic milk to auto parts to anima kits. These companies made Yu and his church very rich. At that time, South Korea was still poor and money for investment was scarce. The government granted capital
Yo, Param? Appreciate the follow. Namaskar, mi amigo.
to only a select number of families, but Yu's approach of raising funds through evangelizing allowed him to rapidly grow his businesses even without governmental support. By the 1980s, his business network was considered a mini Chaebol. But then, controversy hits.
So whenever I'm hearing Chaebol, I'm just thinking of like S-type corporations. Pep, if you're still in there, is that it? Yeah?
In 1987, 32 alleged members of Yu's church were found bound, gagged, and dead in the attic of a factory near Seoul. The authorities ruled the deaths as a murder-suicide pact linked to debts they couldn't pay. After the victims' financial records were probed, money was found going to Yu. He was investigated for suspicion that he was behind the alleged suicides, but the charges were dismissed due to lack of evidence. Nevertheless, courts did find evidence that he was using church members' money and properties to enrich his businesses. In 1992, Yu was jailed for fraud. Once released from jail, Yu attempts to restore his image. He gets really into nature photography and starts exhibiting his work under the pseudonym Ahe.
Yo, that's scary. That sounds like some Hunter Biden shit where he's just got really into art and geopolitics.
Pays top museums worldwide like the Louvre to display.
You know what that tells me? Money laundering. He said, you know what? If I'm gonna go back in politics, I need to be able to launder a lot more money. So what's the best way to do it? Art and photography, baby.
Play his pictures and tries to
And if you're really in 2025, NFTs.
build a reputation as an art star who is rarely seen in public. All, it appears, as an effort to distract from the negative press. He also continues to be invested in various businesses. One of his more profitable ventures is this shipping company. At least $3.8 million went directly to the Yu family.
This scares me because this reminds me, this mentality to me is a lot similar to Miyamoto Musashi with the Two Heavens Sword, you know, the Book of Five Rings, the most lethal samurai ever, but he was also a painter, right? And he had this dual personality. He believed that you have to have like these two opposing things. And I think this guy kind of tapped into that energy.
It's the same
What
company
is my favorite drug? Probably caffeine.
that owns and runs the Sivol ferry. 2 months after the ferry sank, Korean police raid Yu's compound. Hundreds of sect members are protesting.
Yin and yang, yeah, like you know, it's so funny that you brought this up because I believe in yin and yang and so many like yin and yang is a perfect example of life. But you have to have like two things. If you just have one passion, one thing that you focus on, if you just focus on yin, you're not gonna have a complete circle. It's not gonna be sustainable. You have to have something else. It's almost like a polar opposite that allows you to completely disengage, disassociate, and flip your brain to something else to allow like one side of your brain to recover while it's being active. And this way you can have like this perpetual sustainable thing. Yin Yang is my culture. To me, it's a. I think about yin and yang damn near daily.
Testing the raid and attempt to build a blockade. A large banner reads, "We'll protect you, Pyongyang, even if 100,000 church members are all arrested." Helicopters swirl overhead. Some cult members threaten to fight the police. Others vow to die as martyrs. But after combing the massive compound, the cops leave empty-handed. They don't know it yet, but Yu is hiding in a secret closet 300 kilometers away in his holiday home.
Dude, what does this guy have to be thinking? Curled up in the fetal position in a secret closet.
A few days after the raid, and 18 days after Yu was last spotted, a farmer finds a dead body face up in an orchard. It's in an advanced state of decomposition, almost skeletal.
Don't say it's you.
It's at first impossible to tell who it is. The corpse is wearing expensive Italian clothes and is surrounded by bottles of rice wine, a bottle of shark liver oil, and a book written by Yu. After a 3-day autopsy and over a month of investigation, authorities confirmed that it is indeed Yu, a cause of...
Yo, they found him in the secret closet? Oh, that's terrifying. Imagine that he's just hiding there. The closet door opens up and it's the people he's hiding from. This is how they left him.
Death is never determined. More and more damning evidence keeps coming out about the government and the ferry. Auditors discover that Coast Guard officials apparently turned a blind eye to the ferry's glaring safety problems after getting courted by Yu's shipping company over drinks at lavish dinners. Some admitted to letting the ferry pass through inspection points, only guessing from a distance whether the ferry was overloaded. A major factor in its excessive weight turned out to be a marble art gallery on board. Yu personally insisted on adding it to display his artwork on the ferry. One man's greed had sunk the seawall ferry, and as more and more South Koreans were starting to believe, the government's negligence had let it happen. Some Korean families like Yu's are wealthy enough to convince government employees to turn a blind eye to their misdeeds, like fudging ferry inspections.
Because they think, oh, it'll be fine.
But the really powerful ones can command much more than that. And one family holds truly unmatched power, casting a shadow over all others.
Samsung, huh?
In the months after the Seawall tragedy, candlelight vigils turn into weekly protests, calling for truth and accountability for the government's involvement in the disaster. Frustration grows and people start demanding for Park to be impeached. The government cracks down hard in response. Police use water cannons and pepper spray on thousands of protesters. Authorities illegally collect intelligence on mourning families in order to suppress anti-government protests. But anger and frustration continue to grow. And in 2016, another huge scandal erupts. It reveals that President Park is most certainly not the leader who will reign in chaebol power. In fact, she's especially cozy with South Korea's most powerful chaebol families. Illegally cozy.
Of course, if her dad was the architect of this, and she's the daughter of the architect, she's probably going to honor what her dad laid out in front of her.
President Park is found entangled in a web of backroom deals with leaders of Samsung and other corporate executives. Park accepted substantial bribes in exchange for governmental favors. Samsung made a $36 million donation to her best friend's nonprofit, which Park rewarded by greenlighting a controversial merger. This merger gave the Samsung family even more control over the country's most powerful chaebol. The head of the family is Lee Jae-young, often called the Crown Prince of Samsung. The bribery scandal toppled Park's presidency.
피청구인 대통령 박근혜를 파면한다.
Wow, so she actually does get removed.
She was the first ever president of South Korea to be impeached. She was sentenced to 24 years in prison and fined $17 million.
We'll see how long she actually stays in there and how much is actually paid. And once more, okay, not once more, but like she's fined $17 million. So the government, this corrupt government's going to get $17 more million just to bribe to these corporations?
Jae-young was also arrested and sentenced to 2.5 years. Park is succeeded by Moon Jae-in. He promises not to pardon anyone convicted of corruption, but the influence of Samsung.
Okay, so we had a healthy-looking man in office. That's probably better. South Korea's democracy is a joke. Yeah, basically, is this guy any better, Moon Jae?
Samsung and Lee Jae-young proved difficult to curb. Moon ends up pardoning him after just 1 year. The new
fuck.
president admits that those who condemn Lee's crimes are in the right, but that the nation needs him. The economy relies too heavily on Samsung.
So you're saying that he's like a necessary evil for Korea?
To have its leader in jail. With so much power, Lee Jae-young is effectively above the law. And in some ways, this pardon was just business as usual. Lee's father had also been convicted of bribery and fraud in the 90s, but hadn't served a day of his sentence. A 2022 poll recorded 70% of the public approving the decision.
I don't even know why I'm surprised.
Experts say it's because people fear an economic downturn. They believe if Samsung does well, South Korea does well. Lee continues to occupy a top position at Samsung, now as CEO of Samsung Electronics. He's also the country's richest person.
Of course he is. Why wouldn't he be?
Already before, President Moon unexpectedly pardoned the former President Park after she served 5 years of her sentence.
And he pardoned her too? It's propaganda? What's propaganda?
The reason he gave was to promote the people's unity. The dictator's daughter and the crown prince of Samsung both walk free.
Yeah, you had people who just... These two people probably should have stayed in jail and done the time.
And while many everyday South Koreans express frustration
Especially if you went in saying you weren't going to pardon people, and a year later you're pardoning people.
with corruption, chaebol still hold considerable appeal. They're by far the most desirable places to work. Top chaebol offer much higher wages than regular companies. Every year, over 200,000 South Koreans scramble to apply for Samsung. As long as South Korea's wealthiest families control so much of the country's economy, the question remains if real reform is even possible.
In order to have real reform, the government or other, I mean, it's just going to be more family-led businesses, but the government, if they really want to fight this, are going to have to come in and create government jobs that are competitive with these, with Samsung, with the CMC, with Korean Air. The former president going to jail did for a little bit and then got out. Samsung is a South Korean brand? Yeah. If you're picking up what I'm putting down, then please like the video, subscribe, and if you really like it, then share it with some of your friends. My goal here is to spread a positive message while sprinkling my 2 cents on big topics like American, Indian, and world geopolitics, and even small stuff like Twitch drama and online debacles. And if you want to see it live, come join me over on Twitch. Twitch.tv/ActuallyElrod. That's where I'm going to do all my reactions, and after the reactions, that's where we get down a game. And if you're like, hey, I have a video that I want this dude to sprinkle his 2 cents on, then come over on my Discord and let me know and join the community there. And while we're at it, I have to say thank you to everybody who has made that Discord just so poppin'. I never thought I'd have a Discord that's so flowing. It's really cool to see. Shout out to you, Bobby, Omni, Demon, all of you who have been in there who are just super active. Logie, you're the man. Logie is the one who's like modding and helping run the server, so thank you, Logie. Lastly, I challenge you. I have a challenge for you. Make somebody laugh today. We all know there's enough hate and vitriol in the world. If energy is contagious like the flu, then let's spread and get everyone contagious with our positive energy, right? Not negative energy, because there's so much of that. And if we could just be a small little change in someone's day, then you never know. Maybe that's the thing that starts shifting this world to a happier, healthier, just better place. And with all of that said and done, thank you guys, and I'll see you on the next one.